So good morning, everyone. And if you're anywhere else in the world, whatever the time is there, salutations and greetings. So I'm Renee Cummings. I am the first data activist in residence at the School of Data Science at the University of Virginia. I'm also a community scholar at Columbia University, and I'm also the co-director of the Public Interest Technology University Network at the University of Virginia. When I'm not doing all of that, I spend a lot of my time speaking and doing webinars and just having conversations with the amazing community that's interested in AI ethics and data activism. So I got involved in AI because I'm a criminologist and a criminal psychologist and a therapeutic jurisprudence specialist. I also have a background in terrorism studies. So it is my work in criminal justice that brought me into artificial intelligence. As a criminologist, I deal with everything that has to do with lawmaking, law breaking, and law enforcing. As a criminal psychologist, I like to say I spend a lot of time in the mind of perpetrators, looking at the background and foreground factors that really motivate someone to the commissioning of a crime or perpetrating violence. I spend a lot of time combining investigative psychology and forensic psychology with criminal profiling and police science. When it comes to therapeutic jurisprudence, my work in that area looks at ways in which we can always ensure the justice system is trauma-informed and we can ensure that the law has a therapeutic function. So it is my work in criminal justice, as I said, that led me to artificial intelligence, because working in criminal justice, I spent a lot of time training police officers in intelligence-led policing, also known as predictive policing, looking at ways in which we can use data science to reduce crime and criminality and enhance public safety and quality of life. While doing that, I spent some time in the juvenile justice system looking at the ways in which we were doing sentencing. And of course, came upon the risk assessment tools that we were using to decide on sentences and to see who was going to get bail and who was not going to get bail, who was going to get a chance to get out of the system and who was going to have to stay in that system. And if many of you are familiar with that 2016 ProPublica report, you would understand the importance of sentencing and risk assessment tools and algorithmic decision-making systems that were being deployed in the criminal justice system. And these algorithmic tools with their zombie predictions really overestimating the risks of Black and brown defendants in the criminal justice system. So that is the work that brought me to AI, because I started to question these algorithmic decision-making systems and algorithms and the power that algorithms hold and the ways in which algorithms were redefining the criminal justice system and defining the ways in which we were administering justice. I got very concerned about the ways in which we were doing algorithms in the justice system. And that is what led me to this position as the first data activist in residence at the School of Data Science at the University of Virginia, because during my time there, I've been working on a public interest tech tool that looks at how we can score the amount of algorithmic force and digital force being used by the police. As someone who worked in homicide investigation and gun and gang violence prevention, I was also concerned about the ways in which we were doing community policing and wanted to design something that reimagined community policing and put the power back into the community. So this algorithmic force score, this digital force score tool that I'm working with two fantastic data scientists at the University of Virginia to design really looks at ways in which we could put the public back into policing and ways in which we can bring more accountability and transparency to things like police violence or death in police custody or the interactions between police and communities, and how we can bring communities into the conversation about surveillance technology or artificial intelligence and policing or predictive analytics and policing, and giving communities that opportunity to really have a say in how how they want to be policed, or if they want to be policed, or what are the terms and conditions of the ways in which the police are able to use technology into that space. And I'm really committed to this whole concept of responsible tech and trustworthy AI. And that's where my work as an AI ethicist comes into spin. I don't only work in criminal justice, I work anywhere and everywhere an algorithm is being deployed, because I am really committed to bringing an ethical perspective to the ways in which we design, develop, and deploy algorithms. But just to give you a little background, I didn't start in tech, although I'm working in technology at the moment, in particular public interest technology and AI ethics, also lecturing at the University of Virginia in the online data science master's program. I began my career many moons ago as a journalist, and I worked as a print journalist for several years, and then I went into television journalism. And while working in television journalism, I actually became a sportscaster, and it's a secret that few people know, but now it's a secret that's out in the open. A sportscaster, and I did that for a while, and I did broadcasting for a while, and then I moved into public relations and government relations and litigation PR and crisis communications and risk management, and really working with organizations to protect their brand and to give them the kinds of contingency plans that were required to ensure that their brands stayed relevant and stayed stable. And if there was a need for rehabilitation of a brand, if there was some sort of litigation or some type of crisis, that I was there to steer the organization in the right direction. And all of that has come together for me now in the field of AI ethics, because when we think of AI ethics, we think of rights and we also think of risks. And many organizations are committed to a risk-based approach, which looks at ways in which we can flag the kinds of crises or look at the ways in which we need to mitigate risks across the AI life cycle. So I spend a lot of time speaking about AI risks and speaking about ways in which we need to communicate ethically about artificial intelligence and new and emerging technologies. And I also try to spend a lot of time with organizations, helping them develop a culture, an organizational culture that is ethical and one that is open to doing AI in the way it needs to be done. Very committed to issues such as accountability and transparency and explainability, still questioning whether or not we can have trustworthy AI if we don't understand in its deepest context the ways in which the black box works. So if there's not full explainability, how could we have a trustworthy technology? So lots of questions that I'm trying to solve. So when it comes to AI ethics and data activism, it's all about that interdisciplinary, cross-collaborative, cross-sector work that is needed. So I think my background, which is very diverse, and a lot of people call me the AI Jedi because so much of my work is situated within justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Of course, the first letter of each word, creating the Jedi acronym, and algorithmic justice. I spend a lot of time speaking about algorithmic justice and ways in which we need to make algorithms fairer, and ways in which we need to understand bias and discrimination, and the ways in which data needs to be reimagined and redefined, and the ways in which we need to understand those long-term implications of data and society and technology and society, and whether, techno-solutionism is the only solution. And of course it is not, because what we are realizing is that we need to have these diverse perspectives and technology. So what we need are individuals who are coming from that cross-collaborative, multidisciplinary, multicultural background, who are really able to bring unique perspectives to the ways in which we are doing technology. So if it is you are wondering, well, hey, how do I get involved in AI ethics or data ethics. I always say to people, invite yourself to the party. It means that you have something to contribute. We all have something to contribute because one of the biggest conversations at the moment in AI is how do we get communities involved in this conversation? And wherever you are, you represent a community. You represent several communities because we are not just, a monolith. We are all so many parts, so many moving parts, so many exciting parts. And you represent several communities that we need to have in this conversation. So it is very important to have that interdisciplinary background. It's very important to understand that you have a say and you have a very powerful voice that needs to be heard, because not only are you a consumer of technology, you are a producer of knowledge. You produce data. It's your data that's being monetized at the moment. It's your data that could eventually be weaponized against you by the police, by the protective services, by national security and defense, or just by a company, an organization, a job. So it's so very important to understand the power and the privilege and the politics inherent in data and how we are using data to build new and emerging technologies such as AI, and why it is we need all of you involved in the conversation. And beyond the conversation, we need you on the front line where the action is happening, where the technology is being designed and developed and deployed, and where the debates are happening on how are we supposed to do this ethically, and what are the things we need to pay attention to. Because I always say the big thing about AI for me is not what we know, but what we do not know. And how soon are we going to find out what we do not know? And are we going to be in a position at that time to really push back or pull back or to right the wrong? So it's so important for all of us to be in this conversation. Now, for me, I am really committed to mentorship. So I spend a lot of time mentoring many individuals through the university system, persons not only interested just in AI ethics, but AI ethics in healthcare, in business, in hiring, in education, in substance abuse treatment, in criminal justice. There's just in childcare, in child protection, in welfare services. So there's just a plethora of moods and vibes and energies when it comes to the ways in which we need to do AI ethically. Also, I just want to say that, All Tech is Human is really an amazing organization. And it is because of David and David's mentorship, I believe that I got a really solid start, because David gave me an opportunity, and I will never forget this, in his podcast, Funny as Tech. And when he interviewed me for that podcast, it really opened up a lot of doors for me. He gave me a voice that brought me more and more into that critical space where people were listening to me more and more and wanting to hear more of what I have to say. So mentorship is also very critical. And it's also good to be aligned to an organization like All Tech is Human that's doing things the right way and creating the right kind of spaces and the right kinds of opportunities and these kinds of platforms for conversations to happen. So I do have a very diverse history, a very diverse background. I'm very committed to the things that we need to do in new and emerging technologies. I'm very excited about the kind of work that we have ahead. I'm very passionate about AI. I'm very passionate about the ways in which AI can transform our lives and our society for the better. But I'm also very concerned because I know if left unchecked, algorithms can create a lot of havoc, and we may not have the time to pull back or to rewrite those wrongs. So I just want to say to you, welcome to this amazing event. It has been an opportunity like no other. Whenever I get get a chance to speak to individuals who want to enter this field and to encourage individuals to enter. I also want to encourage you to understand the power that you hold in your voice and to know that you represent several communities and to know that you are required at this moment in time to ensure that we get technology right, to ensure that we get AI to a point where it is responsible and to a point where we can trust the kind of technology. We cannot do that alone. We have got to do that together. And at this moment, you are the future. As this technology moves into the future, we are all moving with it, or it is actually moving us forward, and we need you.